Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I am here with.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elli Amir, the lead designer of Worldbreakers Advent of the Khanate, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And speaking of Worldbreakers, that is what we're going to be talking about today. Um, Very interesting card game. And this is what I like about it. I maybe it's just because of my my age, or maybe because I played Magic the Gathering too much in my youth. But I love card games, especially when it's just self-contained. That I don't need to worry about buying expansion upon expansion upon expansion, especially like four or five within a year. I could just get a complete game where I can learn the rules, where my friends and family can learn the rules, and we just play it in a moment's notice. Especially if we're in between role playing games, especially nothing, nothing is as good as a card game right before or in between sessions, just so to break things up a little bit. And the fact that this is an alternate history thing, uh, even more so has my interest. So let's start from the beginning. World Breakers. Where did the idea for this come from exactly?
So, you mentioned Magic the Gathering, and I will confess that I've been playing Magic since I was in fourth grade. One of the kids in class brought this jumble of cards, and me and a bunch of other friends got excited. At about the same time, a couple of the local stores started bringing the game, and it quickly became the core of pretty much everything I did, of my social circle, of my hobbies. I played other things. I played Dungeons and Dragons, I played video games, but it always came back to Magic the Gathering. And I've been dreaming of creating my own version of the classic board control, card duel, call it what you will, tactical card game. And about 2 years ago, I was fortunate to have a sabbatical, and I was talking to a good friend of mine about how to spend that time, and we kept bouncing ideas for a board game. And that sabbatical ended up being dedicated to Worldbreakers.
Oh wow! And why? So this setting is also very original. 13th century Mongolia. I don't think I know any game that's actually, touched that part of the world, place and time. If I may ask, what made you decide to use this? I mean, you could have probably picked any world event or place in around the world. Why this section?
So there's just been an interview with Elizabeth Hargrave, the creator of Wingspan, in a local newspaper. I'm from DC, and they asked her, "Why did you do Wingspan?" And she answered, "Why are all the games about castles and trains and space travel? What if there was a game for birds?" So I am very much a bottom-up designer. I start on the mechanic and the game engine. So the engine for Wallbreakers was very early. And then I was talking to my friend who's a history buff about the settings. And one of the things I really wanted to do is stay away from the what is currently very mainstream medieval colonialist Western narrative. But I am also a huge fan of alternate history, like The Man in the High Castle from Philip K. Dick, and there's a whole series called Elvin Maker, which is like alternate American pre-Revolutionary War. I love that stuff. So I was talking to my friend about where should we go? When should we go? And he narrowed it down to a few periods of history where there was no single hegemonic power, or at least no one or two. So, for example, if you think about the Cold War, we had the Soviet Union and we had the United States. If you think about current times, different interpretations, but it really looks like it's between China and the US, and everyone is in between. The cool thing about 13th century Asia is that there was no one hegemonic power. You have different states, different people. You had Mongols, you had different Arab countries, you had the presence in India, you had presence in Eastern Europe. No one of these controlled the world, but they were all connected. There was this very complex trade routes that connected east to west. And it was really this like very Goldilocks period where it was safe. Like people could get from Europe to China and back and live to tell the tale. If you go 100 years before or 100 years later, that was no longer the case. If you were a merchant caravan, it was highly unlikely you're going to make it to China and back. So it was this magical period in history where there was different people. They were connected in a way that they haven't been connected before. And we have enough knowledge and history about them to tell an interesting story.
You mentioned just now that mechanics or the rules come to you first before you think of adding the setting to it. I'm just curious because I always like to know where when was the match was lit. You know, when did the idea first came to bloom? So if I may ask, where do you recall when and where the rules of this game came to you?
I've been toying with games since forever, and whenever I got a new computer, I took all the contents of the old computer and just copied them to a directory. So I have these nested directories going back in time, and I'm sure that if we dig deep enough, we'll find some ideas for Worldbreakers going back 10, 15 years. It all came back from different card games. When I first play tested with a good friend of mine, he said, "You stole the best mechanic from every game out there." I think that the major inspiration is Netrunner, which is initially a collectible card game from Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic the Gathering. And then in 2012, it was rebooted by Fantasy Flight Games as Android Netrunner. I love Netrunner. I've been playing it nonstop from 2012 until 2015. And from the moment I stopped playing, I started thinking about what would my Netrunner look like. Then in 2019, Fantasy Flight lost the license for the game. And a group of players called Null Signal Games picked up Netrunner and envisioned it and continued the legacy of the game. And they have done a phenomenal job. If you like card games, I strongly recommend looking into Null Signal Games Netrunner. It's very well done. It's amazing what a group of dedicated players have done with the game. Their latest expansion, Borealis, I think is better than anything Fantasy Flight has ever done. But because they did Netrunner and I really liked what they've done, it sort of freed me to think about something else. So a lot of the mechanics in Worldbreakers come from Netrunner. Anyone who knows the two games can make the comparisons pretty easily. Many mechanics come from other games. Magic the Gathering is a notable example. And there's others. There's Legend of the Five Rings, there's Doomtown, there's Arkham Horror LCG, and a bunch of others. So I really did steal the best from all the different games out there. The main engine, the main way in which resources and time interact with each other, that's very strongly from Netrunner.
For anyone that's hearing about Worldbreakers for the first time right now, when it comes to the rules, what would you say is some of the things that stand out, either your personal favorites or things that anyone that's played card games before will immediately notice?
I think that the biggest thing goes back to what you said before about how you want your friends and family to know how to play the game. When I started working on Worldbreakers, I was very focused on a competitive metagame and this small slice of players that go to tournaments and want to tune their decks and win. But very quickly, I discovered that is a bad idea for a new game in the market because the card game genre is already packed, and those that target the hardcore competitive players are even more packed. So I've worked with Jamie, the rules manager and then designer for Worldbreakers, and we've tried to strip it down and simplify it and make it more of a board game that you keep on your shelf. And when you want to play it, you just pick it up, you play a few games, and then you put it back. One of the ways in which we've done it, the game comes pre-packed with pre-constructed decks. So you don't even need to open the whole thing. Like it comes with these 4 bundles. You can open any 2 of them, shuffle them up, and you're ready to play. And the rules themselves, they're designed to be taught very easily. And I constantly get emails and Discord messages from people that taught their 10-year-old how to play the game, and now they're playing with their child, which I think is pretty sweet. So the game is all about accessibility and getting you to the actual meat and potatoes of the game as quickly as it can.
And this is a complete game for 2 players, although you could also play solo if you wish as well. Am I correct?
That's another part of it. The game supports 4 different formats. There's pre-constructed decks. You can build your own decks. You can play a 2-player draft where you build your deck on the fly and then you play the game. And there's a solo campaign. And all of that is in that one box. There's no booster packs. There's no chase cards. There is no singles. You buy the box once, you put it on the shelf, and you can play all these formats, all this replayability.
Oh, okay. And the art's fantastic. Could you share a little bit about how the art direction for this came to be?
Yes, I'm not an art director, but here's something interesting I learned about the board gaming market. There's very few art directors, and they're immensely busy. And it's one of the few positions in the industry which is almost exclusively full-time. So if you think about, let's say, writers or illustrators, they almost always work on a contracting basis. They're freelancers. It is very rare to find a full-time illustrator or writer that works for a company. Art directors, however, anyone I could find was just committed to a company full-time. So I had to do my own art direction. And I would say this was the biggest time sink for developing Advent of the Khanate. The game has 112 unique illustrations, and both the price tag and the time investment in getting them done were considerable. It was a lot of fun, but it was a steep learning curve. I'm fortunate to have found a group of artists that gave more than just the illustrations. So just as examples, Emilio Rodriguez, who illustrated for Fantasy Flight, he did a lot of character design just because I gave him the briefs, he created the characters, and then the illustrations became the briefs down the line. Another one is Agustin Castro, who lives in Argentina. And he's a brilliant illustrator which really focused on envisioning the game and the world very early on. So it was a combination of finding really good artists and just scrambling to figure out what is it that an art director does. And for that, there's actually several great videos from GDC, which is a video game convention, where art directors talk about their experience. And it really became a bit of an art direction 101. Yeah, I'm very happy with how the art turned out. And I think it's one of the biggest strengths of the game. This is how you sell board games nowadays. You create beautiful art and you spam it all over the place. And with Worldbreakers, there was a lot of gorgeous art to spam. Just an anecdote, a few weeks ago, I went to a Star Trek convention. I'm actually wearing the shirt right now. It's called the DNI Star Trek convention. And I met Alexander Siddiq, who played in Deep Space Nine. He was Dr. Julian Bashir. And as part of this autographs, I told him, oh, I really want to show you my game. And it was really cool because we spent 5 minutes and he was going through the art and talking about the game. And I'm almost positive that the art was one of the things that caught his attention and convinced him to just take a small slice of his day and talk about this random fans board game.
Yeah, there's something about art nowadays where, especially with board games, role-playing games, and I think originally they weren't thinking games as an art form so much. They were just, we gotta make money, But things have shifted so much, and now it's like the product, how the look of it, the feel of it, it's very important as well. So,
And
oh, go ahead.
just to take one more step on that, is it okay?
Yes.
I mentioned that I was working with a friend of mine, Rob, on bouncing ideas for the game. He's the historian person. as we were working on what would become Worldbreakers, he mentioned that his wife bought a board game. And it was a running joke between us that his wife has never played a board game. They've been together for decades, and he's a dedicated player. He used to play Axis and Allies competitively. And I'm like, wow, your wife bought a board game. Which one? And he said she bought Wingspan. And I'm like, I have to learn more. So we had a call where I asked her, why did you buy Wingspan after not buying a game? And she provided two big reasons. The first one is that Wingspan, the art is beautiful. And just to be clear, I am not aiming to compete with the art on Wingspan. I've done my best, but it's really one of a kind. So beautiful art is a big part of it. The second part that she mentioned is that in Wingspan, every bird has a flavor text with some actual fact about that bird. That as your opponents are playing their turn, you can just look in your hand and, learn something. And she said that for her and her experience with other non-gamers who try gaming, learning something is important. And we took that and we brought that to Worldbreakers. Many of the cards, the flavor text has a glyph of a pen, and that indicates that the flavor text is a real historical fact about our world. And the Kickstarter campaign comes with a list of references. I'm an academic, so there's like 20 plus references that I've used. I think we're the only Kickstarter campaign that has a literature review. So everything which is on the cards as history is real history. We're going to continue this trend with future expansions. And serendipitously, when Shut Up and Sit Down reviewed us a few weeks ago, Quinns pointed it out as one of the things that he liked about the game. So I really think it's something exciting, which I hope more games do. Incorporate some real information and real research into their content.
I agree. I mean, that's what drew me to Worldbreakers, as well as some of the games I have in my collection over here. Some of my personal favorite board games, at least, and card games. So let's talk about the future a little bit. Now, Worldbreakers was a successful Kickstarter campaign some time ago. Are you planning to do? I heard a rumor here or there that you might be coming back to do another Kickstarter for Worldbreakers. Would you mind expanding on that?
Yeah, of course. I like the pun. I would like to expand on that. So I've done the Kickstarter last year, and it went well. Our goal was $10,000. We got close to $30,000, so almost 300% funded. And I'm very proud to say that we delivered the game about 6 weeks ahead of the deadline. Another thing which I think is unique to our campaign, especially for first-time publishers, we got the game into people's hands and we weren't late, vice versa. We got there ahead of time. And I ordered enough copies to sustain the game for 6 to 9 months. And my thinking was, let's see what's the velocity on this, right? Let's see if the game has legs. And then I'll make a decision on whether I want to create more content or go somewhere else, do something else. I don't know. And then we had this aforementioned review on Shut Up and Sit Down, and the entire stock was gone in 10 days. So we ordered 9 months of stock, and we had copies earmarked for Origins and PAX Unplugged, and we pulled them back because people want the game right now. So why wait until the conventions? And I decided that, that's a pretty solid proof that there is a market for this. And, when I started working on this, I talked to several industry insiders, and they said, like, this is going to be 500 copies, and then nobody's going to buy this again. Like the setting is too complicated, and this is too similar to Magic the Gathering, and you're competing with a very busy niche. Like, finish the Kickstarter, and nobody's going to buy this again. Evidently, they were wrong. So we did indeed announce the expansion for Worldbreakers. It's called the Indigo Sisterhood. It's coming on June 7th. So I'm guessing somewhere around the time you publish this interview, it's going to be out there. And it's going to introduce new cards for all the different guilds. It's going to introduce 2 new Worldbreakers. So these are the main characters of the game. One of them is fictional. Her name is Miriam. She's a trans woman who appears in the first game. She saves the Mongol encampment from an attack, and she's going to be the protagonist of the expansion. The second Worldbreaker is Kublai Khan. So we're proceeding on the trend of taking historical figures and envisioning them through the lens of the game. And in this case, with Kublai Khan, this was surprisingly easy because he was a brilliant leader, and he has made so many advancements in finance and economics that really fit the spirit of the game very well. So this is funny how life imitates art. I actually had a card idea for Kublai Khan making a new type of currency for the game. And then I found out that Kublai Khan actually did make a new kind of currency. He's the first person to be attributed with creating fiat currency. And then there's going to be another chapter for the solo campaign. So we're continuing the story that we started with Advent of the Khanate. And for the solo players out there, there's going to be a thick deck of cards for you to play with. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
the Indigo Sisterhood coming to Kickstarter on June 7th.
Oh, excellent. And if I may ask, like how close is that project like in completion? Like do you have like as in like do you have all the art? Do you have all the cards set in a sense to go, or like if I ask how close is that?
So the Kickstarter campaign for Worldbreakers Advent of the Khanate, we had almost everything when we launched. With the Indigo Sisterhood, we decided to gauge the market and then continue with production. So the game is not done. The design is about 50% ready. The art is about 30% ready. And we project that design and development, including the solo campaign, will take us about 2 months. So the Kickstarter campaign is going to have the complete timeline, but the plan is to fund, hopefully, in June, then July, August, finish the game, and then start printing in September, October. It's a very aggressive timeline. And the reason I'm feeling confident with it is because part of the work on Advent of the Khanate was building infrastructure. So the reason Advent of the Khanate took us so long is because the rules engine and the rules that we built are super polished. In fact, the rulebook is one of the things almost anyone comments on is extremely good. We built this network of artists who are excited to work on the game. I announced the expansion on Board Game Geek, and that day, 4 different artists emailed me and said, "Oh, I noticed you announced the expansion. When are we getting the briefs?" And I'm like, let me finish the campaign first. We have a group of dedicated players who would like to playtest, and I feel that we're very well positioned to go through a very efficient design and iteration cycle and deliver on that timeline again.
Do you know yet about stretch goals ideas with the Kickstarter?
No stretch goals, ever. Advent of the Khanate did not have stretch goals, and the Indigo Sisterhood is not going to have stretch goals. Personally, I greatly dislike stretch goals. I think that Kickstarter is already too much of a FOMO farm, where people get stressed and end up spending money that they might not have spent otherwise. This is not why I'm here. I want enough money to produce the game, and then once that happens, there's a network out there of distributors and retailers, and I want this to be sustainable. And the way to be sustainable is not to squeeze every drop of goodwill from the Kickstarter crowd. I greatly oppose it. So we're not going to have any stretch goals. Any idea that we had for stretch goals is already there. For example, one of the resources in the game is called standing, and Advent of the Khanate came with these cards, which are standing trackers. And in retrospect, they're not very good. People don't like them. It's one of the repeated criticism we get. And with the Indigo Sisterhood, we're going to release new standing trackers, and they're going to be part of the box. They're not an add-on. They're not a stretch goal. Like, the easiest thing would have been to say, our funding goal is 10,000, but if we get to 20, you're going to get these standing trackers. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, I want players to have the standing trackers. They're just going to be part of the main campaign. Another idea we had is to announce the expansion as a 36 card expansion, and say if we raise at least 20K, we're going to have a 54 card expansion. And in fact, I was working with Jamie on these two plans, like which one of these is going to happen. And then I decided no stretch goals, never. So the expansion is going to be 54 cards, and it's going to be fine. We're going to have enough money. We're going to be able to deliver on it. I will stop my rant now, but no stretch goals. Any kind of stretch goal is already bundled with the game.
Yeah. No, and I understand. I've spoken to a lot of creators where the project is funded, but then they sort of get in trouble a little bit with stretch goals. They promise a little bit too much and they're hurt. Bigger companies can do it, but smaller independents it's much more trickier. So yes, so that's exciting. So June 7th. Well, excellent. Is there anything else about this project that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to share?
I just want to say this is a board game for board gamers. And I know that many people see cards and they think, oh, this is for the Magic the Gathering crowd. But we've really put a lot of care and attention to make sure that this is the board gamers card game. So even if you're not into the metagame and the internet discussions and the Discord channels, you just want to pull a two-player game and play it with your friend, your spouse, your child, I think that give Worldbreakers a chance. I think the aesthetic and the story and the mechanics, they're all intertwined beautifully. And I think this is the kind of game that board gamers are going to enjoy.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today about Worldbreakers and the new expansion coming out. Very exciting. And to our viewers, I will put a link in the description below of everything, including once the Kickstarter goes live, I'll put a link in the description for that as well. So yes, everyone, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.